Welcome, everybody. We're pleased to be hosting our sort of regular workshops that we've been running throughout the province through the program. We've got a small group today, and this is not typical, but it is what it is, and probably dealing with everybody's busy schedules. But we're very fortunate to have Ravi, who's going to be speaking to us with regards to cultural diversity in the workplace. And maybe before we get started and before I make my introduction for you, Ravi,
Yeah.
I'll have Cheryl just do the land acknowledgement, or did you want me to do the land acknowledgement as well?
Yeah, go ahead if you would. Yeah.
All right. So this workshop is part of the Alberta Mentorship Program, AMP initiative. We are grateful that AMP is made possible with the support from the Government of Alberta. And it's my pleasure to provide you with the land acknowledgement as well. Edmonton is located within Treaty 6 territory and within the Métis Homelands and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territories of many First Nations, such as the Niha, Cree, and sorry, I just lost my spot here. The Dene Sulin, Dene, and Nakota Sioux, Stoney, and the Anishinaabe, Saulteaux, and the Niitsitapi, Blackfoot. The City of Edmonton owes its strength and vibrancy to these lands and the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked the territory, as well as settlers from around the world who continue to be welcomed here and call Edmonton home. Now, my acknowledgement is based on, because we're located here in Edmonton, but we are also, we have participants from throughout the province, and so my acknowledgement doesn't name some of the other groups that are here in the province of Alberta, but certainly wanted to acknowledge
As attendees are from Ottawa.
Hello? Oh, and we have today Ravi Govindasamy. Ravi will share how to recognize what's needed in the Canadian workplace, how to succeed and understand Canada's culture in Alberta, and how our diversity is evolving and ways to adapt from your previous culture while retaining it. Ravi was born in South Africa, educated in business in the United Kingdom, and moved to Canada in 1987. He is a residential realtor and has worked in home renovation and sales and as an e-commerce representative for Corporate Express and Staples. He volunteers as a mentor for the Edmonton Region Immigrant Employment Council, that's Eric, at Ronald McDonald House, as well as feeding the homeless through the Edmonton Sai Centre. We are thrilled that Ravi will share his experiences and expertise in this session. Welcome, Ravi.
Thanks, Doug.
And thanks so much again as for being a dedicated mentor in our mentorship program and participant at our Global Talent Conference last year. And we're most happy to see you provide us with this session.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So do you want me to start, or Cheryl, do you need to say anything?
No, you feel free. I know you've got slides you want to start.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so just on that point of the mentorship, I've been mentoring for 2 years, almost over 2 years, but I only did one mentor program with a lady, and she became one of the heads of marketing at the Edmonton Sai Centre. So I had a very successful experience with her, and I'm waiting for the next one. So it was a really good experience for me as well.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so you guys you run a good program there. So congrats to you as well. Should I just share or open my PowerPoint, Cheryl?
Yeah, if you can open your PowerPoint and then share your screen.
Okay. Can everybody see that? Can
No,
everybody see?
it's not showing for me. No.
Oh, let's try one more thing here. How about now?
No, Ravi.
No, still not. I'm hitting the share.
Yeah, part of it could be related to multiple screens. I can also,
Okay.
let's see here. I could do the share if let's try that. Well, that's not sharing the right thing. So let's try that one more time. No, that's not.
I can see it though.
Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, we just saw it, but it went back off.
Oh, okay. Okay, because that's actually interesting. That's not what shows for me.
Yeah, now it's back up.
It's
Gerald,
okay.
and Ravi, I'm just wondering, just before we continue,
Yeah.
maybe could we just do we've got a small enough group, maybe we could just do quick introductions and who you're representing, just so that Ravi has an idea of who our audience is today, and maybe I'll just start picking off names. Megha, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doug. Good morning, everyone. My name is Megha, and I'm program officer with CRIAC. I'm also taking the role of MPC, wherein I meet with professional newcomers that are coming to Alberta, and I also work for Alberta funded program to do the rural mentorship part. And I'm really excited to be here for this presentation today because the cultural diversity is something that intrigues me, and I'm always find myself in challenging situations. So I'm really hoping to learn a lot from here. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Megha. Shashi?
Hi, good morning, Ravi and the rest. My name is Shashi, and I work as the Director of Career Professionals with established career professionals such as you. So glad to be here to be a part of this workshop to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashi. Eileen?
Hello. I work with Annette at Scriptorium. I do a lot of the editing, some of the writing, so I'm going to be taking notes today during the session. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks, Eileen. Erin?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm actually in Ottawa at Le Cordon Bleu, and just the topic was really interesting, and somehow came across it on Eventbrite and thought, why not join?
Awesome. Welcome from Ottawa. Kevin? Hello, Kevin. Maybe we'll pass on to Vleeman.
Good afternoon. My name is Victoria Lehman. I'm the general manager from Le Cordon Bleu, the Culinary Arts Institute. We're located in Ottawa. We attract international students from around the world, and we hire many people from diverse backgrounds as well in order to have that collaboration between our staff and students.
Awesome. Thank you. Marzi? Hello, Marzi. And Kevin, I'm going to go back to you just in case. No. And Deepariyi, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Hello. And we have a Zoom user, and I'm assuming that's part of our, who's going under the title Zoom user? All right. Well, I'm sure they're listening intently. Well, obviously,
Yeah.
maybe. Anyways, we'll continue on. Ravi, there you go.
Okay.
If you don't mind, then continue
Sure.
on with your presentation.
So try the share screen again.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I just hit the little green share, correct?
Yes.
And
Awesome. Seeing it.
well, everyone, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks again, and I'll get started. So our topic is cultural diversity in the workplace, and basically these slides represent what my opinion of the topic is, and based on my experiences and how I see this the subject being like promoted and incorporated into the workplace in Canada. So I want you to make a mental image of this slide. You may wonder why I've got the alphabet up, but I just want you to keep that in mind, and I will explain it at the end. So I'm just going to start the slideshow. So I wanted to define the words before we get into it, so that everyone's clear on the meanings. So culture to me is shared values and beliefs, activities based on an environment that you are born into or grown up in, your ethnic background, your country of birth, your religion, your family, friends, influence, and your social groups, which in my case, that's where my culture came from. Although it's changed over the years because I moved countries. And then diversity is basically a variety, a different wide scope or collection of elements that come together to create an experience. And then the workplace, obviously, everyone knows what that is. So it's where you go to work. It's a physical building, store, your home, or any physical place that you actually go to do your job. So why do we need cultural diversity in the workplace, and how do we promote it? Looking at the big picture, we're living in Canada. We've some of us have come from another country, some of us are born here. But when I moved to Canada, the biggest impression that I got is that because I've been here 37 years, and I moved to Edmonton, but I've been around Canada, so I've seen the evidence of multiculturalism around the country, and I see it growing every year as well. So we need to recognize this fact and then find ways to promote our diversity. But at the same time, remember, we're at a job, so we have to create an efficient and productive workplace at the place we are working at. So I just kind of ended this slide with we shouldn't just be surviving, we should be actually thriving in the environment that we're in. So some of the keywords that I'm going to be focusing on, these are two really important ones for cultural diversity, is adaptation and acceptance. So if we acknowledge that we're no longer in our original country or culture base, this would help us adapt and accept other new cultures, the one we're in being Canada. So adapting to our new Canadian culture, as well as accepting the others in the workplace that have come from a different culture. So I see it happen a lot, is that we're trying to focus on our culture and show people our culture, that we forget to recognize the others around us. So I think that's important, to recognize others. And adapting involves changing your attitude sometimes, because we do bring our habits and attitudes from where we originate from. So we need to get to know other cultures, expand our horizons and outlook, and realize or try to learn how others think and function. And I think that would help us in the workplace as well. And then accepting and embracing a new culture helps the adaptation to it. Then an example is like when you're at work, you focus on your job, and a lot of people just do the 9 to 5 thing. They come in, do the job, don't interact too much with most of the people, depending on what their job involves, and then they leave and go home, and nobody sees them till 9 a.m. the next day or 8 a.m. the next day, and then the weekends nobody sees them at all. So in some of my jobs, I found it really helpful to get to know your people in the organization by actually doing out of work activities. So some of the examples that we actually did in my job at Corporate Express was the Corporate Challenge, which was a citywide sporting event, which I'm not sure if they still have it. Joining a social committee, which I did, and a project at work that needs volunteers. So we had a building, it was the Edmonton Sun building on 50th Street. I'm not sure if anyone knows that building, right next to King's College. So we had a huge roof that was empty, and we came up with the idea of why not put a deck on the roof, and in the summertime everyone goes out there instead of staying in the lunchroom. So we raised money, we built the deck in 2 months, and that deck is still there, and every 2 years we go stain it, or we used to, and we have events outside. So it was a huge deck. It accommodated about 100 people, and it was one of the best things that happened to the building. But my point is that while we were building the deck, we got to know people from departments that we've never seen before or never talked to. So the tricky part of adaptation to your new culture is that you need to also retain your own culture, which is also important. So you should not leave that behind or forget that, because that's basically where you came from. So this means showing flexibility in the workplace with others, accepting them, but at the same time promoting your culture and showing others what you're about, because that in turn gives them a new point of view and helps them see you in a better light, or learns more about you as well. So I think that's important. And then once you get this going, there are benefits. So a good start is that you get to know yourself, you learn to adapt to others, you get motivated, because every one of us has goals within our workplace. One of them being promotion and pay increases. So you have to make sure, I think, that you're in tune with workplace diversity. In order to enhance your own goals, you need to be in tune with others. So once you get the skill, that will benefit you in all aspects of life in Canada, not just at work, because it's out there. So if you learn to manage it at work, I think you'll have a better job of managing it outside work as well. So our success at work depends usually on our diversity and adaptation skills. We are placed in an environment where we need to recognize that we're paid to the employer. And our success in that job is part of the company goal. So we have to realize that we have to integrate that function into our cultural diversity as well, to make sure that when we adapt and accept others, that it helps us. It helps the company as well, because it promotes free speech, which I found in my jobs. People don't kind of keep the ideas to themselves. They share the ideas. It promotes equality, group interaction, and makes your work life more enjoyable if you are actually advancing the cultural diversity. It also builds confidence in dealing with different people. So it helps you at your work evaluations, your promotion opportunities, and especially at a management level. Because what I found is when I started work at a company, I was basically in my own bubble and I was doing my own thing. I didn't really care about what was going on around me. However, when I went into a management level at the same company, I now had to teach others how to become cultural diverse and how to accept the cultural diverse group. So you might think that you're not going to be in a position, and it just affects you, but that's not the case, especially when you get to a higher level and you're managing other teams of people.
Can I
So
ask a question, Ravi?
yeah.
Yeah, so thanks so much for sharing your experience. And I I think you touch upon a really important point about there can be this tension between hanging on to your own sense of yourself in terms of cultural identity and sort of adapting, going into a workplace in a different country where the cultural base that kind of supported you and you kind of knew how everything worked gets changed. What helped you kind of, like, what I'm hearing from your story is you're kind of owning your own identity so that you could open up and sort of accept and acknowledge and adapt to outside. What do you think helped you do that?
So, so I left that at the end, but I'll talk about it.
Sorry.
But you're thinking ahead, which is good.
Okay.
I'll tell you what happened to me is I grew up in South Africa and I went up to elementary school. And then my dad decided that he wanted to go to London, England, and so he moved us. And it happened to be the good transition because elementary school ended for me and high school started in England. So it was a good transition. So once I got into high school, the very first thing that threw me off was I had to learn French from day one. And I had an interview with the principal, and he was really impressed with my skills in English, but I had no idea about what to do with the French class. So he actually put me back 1 year in my school just because of the French program. So I was 13 and I had to go with the 12-year-olds because of the French program. So that was one challenge, but that was at school, not at the workplace. And then I basically finished all my education in England, and then my first job was with the London City Council. I found that there was a lot of different cultures within that London City Council group, and one of the challenges I had was my job was to run the computer program that pays grants to people who applied for grants within the inner city. However, there were people in there that they employed that weren't that great at English. They were good at financing, but not good at English. So my point is, you'll get someone that's in a job that has their skills in that's needed for the job, but they don't have the communication skills. So my challenge was to actually train the person that wasn't that great in English. So, and we managed to do it, but that was the challenge. So what that does is hold you up in your own job and delays you a little bit. So to answer your question, I would say that was one of my biggest challenges when you come up to a person that does not understand English well, or not just understand English, but the concepts of what you're trying to explain to them. And then you have to kind of overcome that. So, because that kind of puts a roadblock on the rest of your productivity. So hopefully that answers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Slide, sorry. Any other questions on so far? I have a chat there. Should I open that and see? There's some chat questions.
Yeah, sorry, there is a question for Victoria. How do you find using software translators to connect with you people who don't speak English?
Personally, I've never used them.
Okay.
I've never used software translators. I've done it myself.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I say they had a problem, they do understand the terminology and things like that, which they're not familiar with, which is not their fault. It's because they haven't used that technology back home. Then you have to explain what it is, right? So, like certain finance terminology, or like the word amortization. I get that a lot now as a realtor. I say the word to a client and they have no idea what amortization means. So I have to explain to them how it relates to the mortgage transaction. And then if I say, this is the number of years that you have to pay off your mortgage, and it's now 30 and it was 25, and then they get it. They go, I have 30 years to pay my loan off. So they actually get the word. So you have to explain it in the simple terms for it to be effective.
Yeah, and if I could just take a moment, Victoria, your follow-up, do the programs capture the language but miss the message. In the work we're doing with like our Alberta Mentorship program, supports 3 different organizations in rural Alberta to launch their own career mentorship. And so one of our partners in Lloydminster, they've had to deal with, quite new, new immigrants and refugees from Ukraine, where language really isn't available, and so they have made use of Google Translate. The thing I think I learned from her context is that, spending time to make sure you're sharing the context of what you're talking about can really help. I think it takes longer, right? And you need to be, kind of focus on using language that is straightforward, no idioms or roundabout sort of communications. But they found that in fact made sort of mentoring meetups possible. So hopefully that answers your question. But let's hand it back over to you, Ravi.
Actually,
Okay.
I have a question for you, Ravi.
Yeah.
You had mentioned you sort of transgressed or and possibly transcended from working alone and being comfortable with working alone, and then you sort of moved into a space where, oh my God, like I'm now in charge of a group. Like at what point did you, I guess, drink the Kool-Aid, if you will, and just said, okay, well, this, before that, it made sense for me just to work on my own. I'm,
Yeah.
individualistic, etc. I've
Yeah.
got some things to do, and just, I'm not going to put words in your head a bit. Get
Yeah.
out of the way. I got stuff to do. But now you're in a position where you've got to work with a team and possibly a multi ethnic team. And what inside of you just, I mean, obviously it's from a business point of view, it makes sense, but
Yeah.
was there sort of an intrinsic change for you as well?
Yeah, good. Thanks for the question. So this happened. I was in a company called Corporate Express, which is an office supply company, and they were Dutch owned, but they had companies. They had branches all around the world, and I was in purchasing. So I was purchasing computer products, and that was my solitary job. Nobody came to me. If they wanted something, they'd send me an email or call me. There was no interaction with very minimal interaction with people. And then my boss came to me and says, "Would you like to be the e-commerce specialist for Northern Alberta?" And I said, "Sure." And then I took on the job, and one of the first things was to train the whole group, train customers, travel around the province. And my very first presentation was the city of Edmonton in this new city hall. It was just built. And he said, "You have to do a presentation to the city." And I thought I would maybe meeting a couple of city Edmonton managers. So I said, "Sure." And I walked in with my laptop, and the guy didn't, I mean, my manager didn't tell me that, but he might have been kind of just seeing how I reacted. And I started sweating at the very first slide. I was doing a PowerPoint slide and an online presentation, and I'm sweating and trying to control my anxiety. So I got this anxiety kicking in. I'm sweating, and I'm trying to remember my content, and it was a total disaster. But I managed to kind of get some of the ideas across, and then I went to my boss. I said, I don't want the job. I want to go back to my old one." And he took me into the office and he said, "I need you to join some speaking groups like Toastmasters, and I need you to pick small groups every week within the company, like 2 to 5 people, and talk to them about what you're doing." So he said, "You're not quitting. You're gonna overcome that." So I did that for about 6 months, and it worked. And after 6 months, I was actually going to him and saying, "Who am I presenting to next?" And so I traveled around the whole of Alberta, from Lethbridge to Grand Prairie, and did presentations for clients. I did the government presentations, U of A, all the oil companies, and I grew the percentage of e-commerce from 8% to 80% while I was in that job. The other motivation that my boss gave me, he was a really good boss, so he knew how to manage. So he said, "I'll give you bonuses if you reach your target every year." Right. So again, it's not just as simple as just a money thing, but there was. We have company trips. We have everything going on in the company that you can actually participate in, but you have to achieve your goal. So all of a sudden, all the anxiety and the nervousness took second place to my motivation. So your motivation takes over, and now you're thinking about your goals, and you forget about your anxiety. So that's basically how I handled it.
Interesting. And then the whole idea of like speaking to, like, I guess the power of working with teams and
Yeah.
understanding, because obviously you've seen it from both sides, right?
Yeah.
And so at what point did you go, geez, if I can work with a broader team, I can do more work, or I've got, sort of more revenues coming in, or I've got a happy team. Was that something intrinsically that you felt or discovered at one point? I mean, certainly you've talked about yourself and some of the things that you were able to develop, and that I think that's amazing, because that's not an easy challenge to overcome.
No, I thought I was going to give up the job and leave the company and go work in the pizza shop. That's basically how I felt at that point, walking out of the city of Edmonton. And I said, I just wanted to go and hide in my car and stop the presentation. But I finished it. And then at what point, 6 months later, after I did all my mini group trainings and everything else, it vanished. Basically, it was gone. Right. So the anxiety left. And but I realized that the company goals were important, and then I started to enjoy what I was doing. So they actually, about a year later, they actually invited me to be a company trainer for other branches. So I'd actually go and train other branches on. It was called the Continuous Improvement Program. That was the name, CIP. So basically, you go to the warehouse and look for 5 issues that need fixing, and then you would actually address the staff on how they could fix those issues. So you'd find a problem in a certain area of the organization and then help them to fix it by training them and presenting. So I became part of the program for another 3 years after that. So
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So just continuing on the next slide. So this is exactly what we were talking about. Achieving a productive work environment is a result of, or works in line with, cultural diversity. So I think a big word here is respect. Show other people respect that you work with, and you'll get it back. So it's a two-way street, right? Whatever you give out, you get back. And the same with negativity. If you give out negative vibes, that's probably what you're going to get back from other people in the organization. So I always like to promote open communication, which promotes productivity and ideas and prevents employee to employee or employee to manager barriers. So I find the barriers we create ourselves. They're not there when you start. You create them. And I find a lot of employees, they get together. All of a sudden the manager's the bad guy when he's not really but the fact that the new person comes into the group and learns that the manager is the bad guy, it affects their productivity, because now you have this impression in your head and it creates a barrier. So every time you meet your manager as a new employee, the first thing that comes into your head is he's not going to be working with me. He's just my boss, and he gives me a whole bunch of stuff to do. And that creates a negative attitude. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It does happen in certain management situations, but it's your attitude and your outlook that will change things. So you have to work at it. So don't think of your role as a closed box, but instead think of it as an integral part of the whole, where the others play an important role. So that's basically what I explained. Another way to look at that is if your coworker is not productive and there's some friction between you and your coworker, this will probably affect your job. So we're all in the cog in the wheel turning around in the organization. So if one, or a chain, or if one of those links in the chain doesn't cooperate or has an issue, it affects the rest of the production. So that's one way to look at it. So as humans, we create cultural barriers naturally, I think. And we often, those barriers that we have created restrict ourselves, so we need to find a way to overcome them. So you may be in a work group with different religions, which is a big one in Canada, different languages, which we talked about, different ages. Age is a big one because I see a lot of older generations coming up for retirement. They just have trouble communicating with the new entry, the new people coming in from university. It may be technology that's the reason. It may be just that they have an attitude about younger people coming in and trying to take their job, which is, I find, a lot of resistance happens there. So they kind of hold back on the training because they think you'll take their job. So that's another obstacle to overcome. So you should kind of find a way to overcome it, deal with the different ages, mixed genders as well. Now that we have more gender divisions and groups in our society, we have to recognize them and work with them as well. So I had a situation where we had a couple of people in the organization that were homosexuals, and I mean, I personally think they're great people to work with because they promote the work environment, and they are very amicable and very friendly. And the two people that I knew in that organization, I never seen a negative attitude from them any day that I work with them. However, there were other people in the organization that didn't accept them. So there was that friction between them, which I experienced. But me personally, I had a good relationship with them. So that does happen more and more now. So you have to find a way to deal with that. And you have to recognize the diversity and find a common ground. So the key word there is common ground. When you find something common to work with someone else, I find that you work better with that person or a common goal. So any comments about that one?
Yeah, I find it really interesting. So often in the kind of diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging work, there's a focus on like bias. We have to catch our own bias. What I'm seeing as you talk about this, we create cultural barriers that are kind of a natural thing that come out of, I'm a certain age, I come from a certain ethnocultural background or a certain region, language, like all of those things that create our sense of who we are. And we do have a natural sort of draw to want to be with, who we identify with. It's such a different tone when you talk about it as this kind of cultural barrier rather than bias, which I feel sort of makes it a psychological sort of issue rather than an extension of like who we are in our world, in our society. It just feels like there's a more accepting, more acknowledging, like this is just part of who we are, rather than some kind of more sinister kind of like thing we have to get over. Like the bias language, to me, makes it a little bit more blaming.
A lot of different companies. I found that the tolerance level, the acceptance level, and the recognition of other genders, other cultures, other languages has improved immensely. So when I started working, like in England, that tolerance and acceptance, even at a corporate level, even at the policy level of the company, was not accepted, right? So now you have all the policies have changed. Your corporate structure and culture in the company has changed in most companies. So that's actually encouraged people to actually expose their vulnerability and their condition, like their whatever condition they come with. or sexual orientation. It actually, they're not afraid to come forward and say, this is who I am. And then they get accepted more often. So I find that we're going in the right direction in terms of that. So from my experience in the jobs, that's how it's been. And now that I'm in real estate, I see two sides of the coin. I see other realtors experiencing the same thing, and I see my customers experiencing the same thing, where they just not they don't think twice about coming out and just talking about it, or going into an environment of a large group of people and saying, this is who I am, right? This is how I dress. You just have to accept me, because that's what I'm accepting you. Why don't you accept me? So that's the mentality that I'm seeing nowadays, which is a good thing. It's positive. So the next slide is I went to your website and I looked up the subject, and you do have it explained on your website if anyone needs to check it out. There is a whole section on cultural diversity. So what I did was I picked up some keywords and I added some of my own, just to kind of explain the whole concept. So awareness, we discussed most of these, but I'll just go through them. So awareness is to be aware and recognize the various cultures present in your organization and your workplace. Attitude is develop a positive attitude to others, no matter what your previous mindset was, because a lot of people come with a very strong attitude and they bring that to the organization, and that needs to be a little bit more flexible than usual. And then knowledge is gain some knowledge of the other cultures, get out there and learn about what's going on in the other societies, go to events. We have a whole bunch of events in Edmonton now from different multicultural organizations. And so just get out there and learn about them. Don't stereotype them and think this is how they operate, because that's not true. Go out there and actually experience it, and you'll be amazed what you learn. And once you learn the skills to adapt to our Canadian culture, then accept newcomers with a different culture. So I think it's also important to realize you're in Canada and you need to adapt to our Canadian culture as well, not just force your culture around. You need to adapt to the Canadian culture, whether it's like going to a hockey game with a bunch of your friends at work, or dressing up for Halloween. There's certain things that we do in Canada that we adapt to. I think the kids do it way better than the adults, right? So I think we need to learn from them on how to adapt to a new culture. So it's a lot easier for the kids, but they do it freely and they have fun doing it. So why don't we just take some lessons from them as well, right? So adding a few more terms there: adaptation, learning to adapt to a new environment, culture, and socially and workplace. Acceptance of others who they are and recognize the diversity at the same time. Appreciation of other cultures could teach us new things and broaden our thinking and experiences. And acknowledgement, listen and have an open-minded approach, and always try to respond positively, not to focus so much on the negative. And respect others and understanding. Try not to make assumptions and use stereotypes about other people, but instead get to know your fellow workers and their cultures and way of thinking. So any comments or questions on that one?
And I would just add, if people feel more comfortable typing something in the chat, that's totally fine as well. But otherwise, you could just unmute yourself and speak.
Do I need to read those ones, or?
Yeah, the comments a little bit, just like someone's come in later, so just saying hello, and yeah.
Okay, I'll just go through them.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, like as you're reading, I really see in your keywords that you've added, there's sort of this quality, I would call it like yes and, that yes, I'm coming from my own culture and I can acknowledge others, that just the kind of openness you're modeling to be receptive to what's around. And I don't hear in any of your language that it means somehow your culture is lesser or that there's any issue or problem with it. It's just being open.
Yeah. Yeah, but in my case, so mine's kind of biased towards the Western culture. Like my wife calls me, I'm going to share this with you, which you might find funny, or hopefully you don't find it offensive, but she calls me a coconut. So, right, so that's my name in the family. And my son-in-law is also a coconut, right? So basically, we grew up in the Western culture and we've adapted that as our culture. However, I am Indian. My ancestors are from India, but I've never been to India and I can't speak any Indian language, which also a lot of Indian people find strange to understand. So I have that kind of reverse interaction from Indian people, especially my customers, where the first thing they talk to me is in Hindi or Punjabi, and I have to say I can't speak it, right? So I just thought of that. So basically, that's another challenge when I'm dealing with customers is how do you tell people that you don't speak your own language and they just step back, but they seem to handle it after a while, and then they know that you got their best interests at heart. So I find a way to do it, but I do have challenges when I'm coming up against someone that can't speak English very well. So, but it hasn't stopped me from doing a transaction with them. So yeah, that's kind of funny, what I just thought of. But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, I have almost like I have an advantage of living in a Western country because I grew up in that environment anyway. So that leads on to the next slide. So my own experiences, my childhood was in South Africa, educated in England. So my first two jobs were in England. So a negative thing that I experienced in England was racial profiling, which happens everywhere. We have to acknowledge it and we have to find a way to overcome it and to actually also try to work with the people that we're getting it from. If we just shut them off and we just create a barrier, it's not going to help. So we have to find a way to work with those people. I found family restrictions are a big one. Especially in our culture, we have family restrictions where your family doesn't allow you. My dad didn't allow me to go to other cities to work in. He said, you have to stay in London, you have to stay at home because we need you. So right away, my career is cut in half because my dad didn't allow me to go to other cities and learn and work with the companies that I needed to. So family restrictions are a big one, especially in our culture. And income pressures, a third one, is that you're forced to do a job because of the money. And it's not a job that you may like, but you have to take that job because you need the money. So the money forces you to do something that you're maybe not happy in, and then that creates pressures in the work environment and you're not really happy. So it is an issue to overcome. And then when I moved to Edmonton, my next three jobs were, again, fairly easy transition, but with some learning challenges. So when I came to Canada, I had to learn a lot of new terminology, right? So I never knew what certain things were. Like I'd go into the lunchroom and they said, "You want some pierogies?" And I have no idea what they're talking about, or stuff like that. So, or talk about a lot of guys would talk about the Oilers, and I had no idea who the Oilers were until I saw a couple of games. And they'd say, "So what do you think about Gretzky's goal?" And I'd look at them and say, "Who's Wayne Gretzky?" And I get the weirdest look ever. But I learned who Gretzky was pretty fast. So that was some of the challenges when I moved here. Another challenge was I came from administration from the London City Council and I went right into sales. So that means that your interactivity with people like just multiplies tenfold because you're working on your own and all of a sudden you're working with people. So when you go from one job to another, it puts you in a whole different ball game when you have to deal with people. So you have to figure out a way to do that. So I'm going to take you back to the first slide, which I promised I would do. And I want you to open up and tell me what you think the significance of this slide is. Is a test.
It's different, vibrant colors.
Yeah, there's a lot of answers. That's a good one.
Mhm.
I mean, when I look at it, I see like there's a different world through each letter.
Yeah, that's the letters actually show. The picture actually shows what the letter is, beginning the first letter, but that's the secondary objective of why I put it there, right? So, well, that's how we learn the alphabet, basically. A's for apple, B's for ball, right? But so any other suggestions before I explain my version?
Yeah, I've just noticed, well, you've got two sets of the, sort
Yeah.
of the alphabet, and one is about color and different colors for each letter. And then as you stated before, like each of the ones above have a photo that represent, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly beautiful and different colors, but now that you've said, A is for apple, yeah, all of a sudden I'm seeing that significance between the letter and the photo, that there's a connection.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't even spot that. It's a good one, Doug. So, yeah, any more?
Yeah,
more
what I
information?
see, I'm sorry, who?
Shashi, go ahead, Mega.
Oh, thank you, Sashi. What I see is that, if we compare the uppercase and the lowercase to just a letter, but then, with the pictures, it's adding a lot of layers. And
Yeah.
now it is making me think in relation with the humans and the cultural identities that they bring. There's so many layers, like it's not just letter
Yes.
A, but there's so much. That's what and
Yeah.
yeah, so
So
you have everything from animals to fruit to other things. So
yeah.
yeah,
So
adding another layer to it. Yeah.
yeah, so Mega, you got to the closest version of my interpretation. So good, well done.
Did I pass the exam?
Well, it's an open-ended question. You all passed the exam because some of you gave me an interpretation I wasn't aware of, right? But so I'll tell you why I put the slide on here is so it's the alphabet and there's 26 letters in it. And if you take one letter, like you take the L, it doesn't mean much on its own. It's just L, right? It's just a shape. If you take the letter P, it's just a P. It doesn't mean much on its own. You can't do much with one letter. Except there's the exceptions to that, which I realized is I is an exception because I means me. But that's just an exception. But if you take the letter B, it doesn't mean much again. But when you take the letters and you put them into a word, like cultural, now it means something. So what you've done is you've taken every letter and you put it into a word and you've actually created a meaning from those letters. So now you take those letters and imagine that letters are all the people in the world, right? These are all the people, 26 different nations or cultures in an organization. And you take them and you put each one in a team. And now you have immense power from those 10 letters. So that's the reason I put the slide is when you take all these cultural diverse people and you put them in a team and you form a word, it becomes more powerful. And when you take words and you put them into a page or a book, it's like it just quantifies the power. So that's the reason I put the slide there is you take this image and you think about it, and that's how you promote your cultural diversity. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, so basically that's me done. If you have any more questions, we can discuss further.
I have a question, Ravi, and it's something that I know the staff at Eric often, well, maybe often, but will recommend, especially when it comes to communications, the Toastmasters as a tool. Can you speak to that a little bit? Obviously, you found your mojo after you started taking Toastmasters, and Toastmasters is not just for, let's say, a new culture coming into Canada, but for people who are struggling with communications and how to articulate a message. And
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the Toastmasters? Because it's something I know that.
So actually, so Doug, actually, I didn't join them. So I
Oh,
want to be
okay.
totally honest with you. I didn't join Toastmasters. I got my training from my boss's suggestion. He had two suggestions. He said go to Toastmasters, and he said to take little groups within the company that you work with and train them every week. So I did option two.
Okay.
So I went into my company and I sent out a memo and I said, whoever wants training, meet me in the boardroom, but I'm only doing groups of 5. And I gave them an incentive. I said, if I do groups of 5, I can do one-on-one with you in the class, and it won't be too big, and you'll be able to pay attention and you'll be able to ask me questions. So they all came every week. 5 people came, and I trained. I got through the whole organization within a year of training them. But what that did was give me the confidence to train the bigger groups. So then I would go to Dow Chemical and University of Alberta and Government of Alberta Downtown and train them in big groups. So it was a double-edged sword. I was training the people, giving them value, and I was learning how to speak publicly at the same time.
And that's huge. I mean, like for most of us, we all have some form of anxiety when it comes to speaking in groups.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but thanks for sharing that. I mean, sometimes joining a group it can be perhaps a little bit easier. You took a harder route, I think. It's just threw yourself into the fire and just said, I'm going to do this.
Well, because it was job related. I applied for the job. I was given the job, and my boss said, you're not leaving. You're not quitting. You're staying in it. And he supported me 100%. So there's your job employee barrier. It's all gone. You're working with your boss every day, and he's promoting you, and he wants you to succeed, right? So every boss is not like that, but I had one that was. So he actually was responsible for my success in that role. So yeah, that's the reason. If it wasn't for him, I think I probably would have quit and I would have been somewhere else. So
thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just checking in if people have questions. I don't know, Ravi, if you had a final slide with your contact information, but Shashi, please go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I didn't want to really promote my business, but so I'll just talk about that. So basically, I left Staples in 2019, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And my friend said, "Why don't you start a business?" And I said, "Sure, I'll start a business. What business?" And they said, "Well, I think you'll be pretty good at like working with people, and real estate would be a good fit for you." So I didn't give it a second. I didn't. It was at the back of my mind, or even not in my mind, that I could become a realtor. And then I took a year off, and at the same time, COVID hit us. So I said, what am I going to do for this year? I'm not working. COVID hit us. We're stuck in our house. We can't go out. So I enrolled in the real estate course at Real Estate Association of Alberta. I enrolled, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll just give it a shot. And then I enrolled in the course and took residential real estate for that COVID year. And then I joined RE/MAX in 2021. And I've been doing it for 4 years. And the only regret I have is I should have done it 20 years ago. Because it's something that I just find it's amazing career. To find someone a house that they worked hard all their life for. To that house on possession day, and you see the look on their face, I've never experienced that in my life. So I'll probably do this for the next 10 years. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, thanks for sharing that, Ravi. Sashi, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Ravi, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It was quite informative. I know from the human resources background that perhaps a training about different cultures within an organization would really be helpful. And as you said, there are a lot of stereotypes, bias that one have to kind of overcome throughout, and it's an ongoing learning. I'm just curious to know, like, how you in your work, you must be dealing with different kind of clients from different cultural background. So how do you ensure that you have the right communication? So do you do some kind of, learning before even you say, for example, you meet somebody from Mauritius. So would you care to learn about who they are, their culture is before you interact with them as your client? Like, how do you do that? What's your best approach?
So good question. So what I do is first I break the ice because nobody wants to deal with you if they don't like you, right? It doesn't matter how good you are as a realtor or any other job. If the personalities don't jive together, they're not going to work with you. They're not going to call you back. So I kind of call it a warm opening. I don't go right up to them and go, "Hey, this is my card. If you want a house, call me." Those days are over, right? So I go up to them and I say, "So you found my name on your website, or you got my name from a friend. Let's just do a coffee, and we'll learn about Edmonton." That's all I say. I just go for a coffee to Tim Hortons, and I say, "Hey, have you watched the Oilers game lately? Have you seen what's going on downtown? Have you been to the Caribbean Festival?" So I kind of identify with them using their background as well, depending on where they're from. I've been dealing with a lot of people from Toronto lately, coming in. I've dealt with a few coming from Ukraine. So you kind of have to first make them feel comfortable with you, and then you get into your transactional discussion. Right. So that's what you just said, Chassis. Yeah, you have to figure out where they're from. And then without being nosy. So that's the key there. You have to figure out where they're from without being too nosy, because some people don't like to give you too many personal answers to their life. So I basically ask them a few personal questions, but I try to ask them about, so what brings you to Edmonton? Where do you work? Where do you travel? Where would you like to live? So you kind of open that up. And then once they're warmed up, and then you get into it. Also, would you like to go see a few homes? Are you working with a mortgage lender? Do you have a home inspector? Do you have a lawyer? So you add value. The next stage is adding value and bringing more people to the table so that they make it. I always try to make it a one-stop shop when I deal with clients, to try to make the legwork for them a lot less. So I send them mortgage lenders, I send them home inspectors, I send them lawyers suggestions, because a lot of them are new. They're new to Edmonton, so I have no idea who to go to. So I send people that I've worked with that I know that will do a good job for them, and then they're really happy at the end. So that's the way I do it.
Thank you so much. I think you raised a good point, saying not being too nosy, because I think as newcomers and somebody coming to Edmonton, we all come from different cultures. And for example, I come from India, and it's quite okay to ask, who are you? What about your family? How many kids do you have? But again, the same question I cannot ask somebody from a different culture. They might feel I'm just talking too much, or wanting to know more about the business, but it's just the genuine interest, right? So again, at a workplace, it could be different, but again, in your job, I think you'll be dealing with different clients. So I was just curious to know how it is. So that's a very good point.
So what
set boundaries, and those kind of things. Thank you.
So part of our training at our brokerages is we do personality analysis. So we basically have a chart in our boardroom with a personality graph and a personality. We call it personality boxes. So when you're dealing with someone, say I'm dealing with an engineer, right, as a client, and he wants to buy a house. I know this guy is full of numbers. He's full of drawings. His head is full of analytics. That's how he thinks. So that's how he's going to think about the house the same way. He's going to think about the square feet. He's going to think about the roof. He's going to think. So I focus on those aspects of the client when I'm dealing with someone who's an engineer. So you need to know, you ask him what profession are you in? What do you do for a job, right? If I'm dealing with someone like, say, a photographer or a painter, I know they're emotional. They like art. They be creative. They want to know the colors of the walls in the house, right? They don't care about the furnace. They just want to know, what color are the trees? What color are the walls? Where they're gonna hang a painting. So I focus on that. So that's one method I use when I deal with clients, is I find out their profession and I do their personality analysis and then take it from there.
Yeah, it's just
Thank you so
gonna
much.
just to add to that. Sorry, I'm hopefully not taking up too much time, but to Ravi.
That's
Um,
okay.
yeah, like it's interesting because it's a fine line. I'm thinking what you're saying is, certainly the whole thing about making assumptions about people. So let's say it is an engineer, we make the assumption that their head is full of numbers and and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah, that's
so, like to your point, it sounds like your approach is to sort of test the waters, find those common denominators,
yeah,
and be an active listener, ask some questions so that then you get a feel for them. Because, yeah, we could say, well, an engineer comes, this is how I'm going to deliver.
yeah,
But it may not be the case. So,
yeah. You're right. Yeah. So yeah, you need to have some flexibility. I think that's true. That's a good point. Another thing I found is dealing with couples when unfortunately they're having a bad situation and they need to separate, which I've had to handle. So you're dealing with one spouse and you're getting a story from him or her, and then you're trying to deal with the other spouse, and it's a completely different story that has nothing to do with the first one. And now, how do you resolve that conflict? Because you have two different intentions. One wants to sell the house, the other one doesn't. There may be kids involved, so you almost become a marriage counselor besides a realtor, right? So I've had that happen, and you just you go to your broker, you ask for help, but you have to deal with it because they become your client, right? One of them has asked you to sell their house or to find a house, and the other one's not agreeing to it. So how do you deal with that?
Thanks, Ravi.
Yeah, welcome.
Ravi, I love that point where you said in the initial slide that it is very important to acknowledge that we are in a new land and embrace that. So, what I take away from your today's presentation is that be ready, have a growth mindset that we are here in the new land. We go by the rules of the land while also retaining some of the very important values that our culture, teaches us not to go away. Because when I was new here in Canada, there were so many cultural pieces that I was bringing, which put me in a very awkward situation at times. And I'll share with everyone here that I was volunteering with Community Kitchen, and then there was a Rotary. I was alone, and I just volunteered there, and there was a Rotary members from the Rotary Club joining, and they were the folks who were elderly, and I was paired with a gentleman who was elderly. And in our Indian culture, we have this respect as a main component of things. And then to this gentleman, I was saying that don't worry about picking up this heavy stuff, I am here. And that gentleman took it in a very, very bad, and he's like, what do you think? Do you not find me capable of able to take it? And I was like, oh my god. But then I immediately apologized, and as I felt that it was something that I have done wrong, and I apologize, and we became good friends. I'm still in touch with the gentleman. He's still checking on the cultural piece, and it's like, how's it going for you? But then I feel that it is important to reflect on those incidents and learn, and also keep. And while I know that that respect was not taken in the good connotation there, but I still have the respect with me. So sometimes you have to be judge of these kind of incidents, and see what works and what doesn't. And same thing happens at my workplace also, where I have to be mindful after that incident of what I'm saying, how I'm approaching
Yeah.
my colleagues. So, and then I feel that as a newcomer, while there are so many opportunities for us to learn through the presentations like these that we are doing, but I feel that as an organization, you play a very big part in teaching, and in showing that what is cultural, what is Canadian cultural, and how we go. Diversity is a big piece, and all my colleagues are very, very mindful. We do a lot of trainings related to that. So that organization also plays a very important, and then your own mindset, your growth mindset, and not to be very strict with I am right, or but be able to learn. And that's what I kind of got from today's presentation. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mega. So I have something to add to that, is that when you have a bad experience with someone, it's like getting bitten by a dog or burnt by fire. You will never go back to the dog and never go back to fire. But that's not the way to approach it, because now you're shutting yourself off from every other friendly dog, right? Or the person that you need to work with. So you need to overcome, that's what I said before. That's a barrier. You need to overcome the barrier, which you did with that guy. You overcome the barrier. Now he's probably your best friend, right? So to speak. So once you overcome the barrier and you show people who you are and you get to know who they are, they're just another human. They're just a bunch of elements and atoms like you. If you think about it on that level, they're not a super god or something that you have to be scared of. So you basically have to break the barrier and work with them, and that happens every day in the workplace. So it's a good way to approach it.
Absolutely, Ravi. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
No, and thank you so much, Ravi, and everyone who participated, because we make our culture together, right? Like from wherever we've come from. Ravi, you've done a great job of sort of like it's up to us to make what's happening in front of us be positive, or instead of negative, and to work with that. So thank you so much to everyone. I see we're a little bit past time. And everyone staying in. We will be sharing the recording of this session on our Alberta Mentorship Program YouTube channel very shortly, with the fine support of Annette and Eileen from Scriptorium. We'll also have a spotlight article, and so I'll be sharing that out with everyone, and we'll continue to promote this. Just as a little note, I was kind of surprised to see we've got people coming in from as far away as Indonesia today in our call, great to see people coming in from Eastern Canada and Ottawa as well. I used to live like about 3 blocks away from the Cordon Bleu school in Ottawa, so and I never got there to sample anything. So it's reminding me of that great memory. But thanks so much for joining us. And I don't know, Rav, if you have a final thing to say before we close up.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for attending, and it's nice to meet you guys online. It's always good to meet you in person. So if you want to meet me in person, just shoot me a text or an email from if you want to share it, Cheryl,
Okay.
and I'll be happy to have a coffee with you. And also, if you need any help with anything else, it can be anything, because I have experience in different areas in the city. Or if you know someone looking for a job that needs help, let me know. We also are looking for realtors in our office. So if you know anyone who wants to join real estate, I'd definitely have a chat with them, because I've joined a new office this year in West Edmonton, and we are expanding. We have 15 now. We're expanding our team of realtors. So if you know anyone, let me know. I can help them out. So, and thanks again.